For me, the number one question after a role play or after a call, if I were a leader, is, so how do you think that went? The way that the salesperson answers allows you to adapt your questions and use the right presuppositions. So I think empathy in sales is being customer centric. If you boil sales down to its most basic form, is what problem do you have and let me help you solve it. I think Johan Cruyff, the Dutch football player, said football's a simple game complicated by idiots. Sales is the same. It's a very simple thing. Lots of effort required, lots of questions, good questions required to be asking, but nothing's going to change macroeconomically. It just isn't.
How do you recognize that someone is not authentic, and how do you bring it up?
Do you know what? I think the way that I sort of explain it is,
Hey Kieran, how's it going, brother?
good, Michael. Better than you by the sounds of it.
I got this flu and oh man, it's going nowhere. But anyways, good to have you. Before we start jumping to coaching and all that, fun stuff, I want to get to know you a little bit better. Just tell us a little bit about your journey. You ended up in enablement and why you stayed so long.
Yeah, I've been in enablement for about 5 years now. My career is significantly longer than that, but I use a good moisturiser, as you probably can't tell. I think I've been in the sales world now for about 17 years, 18 years. But I probably started when I was like 22, 23. Originally as a salesperson. My first sales job was one of those sort of call centres back in the olden days, predictive dialer, selling car insurance at all times of the day, calling people's houses. Apparently they were warm leads, but no one had ever heard of you before, one of those ones. But I was quite surprised because I had a sporting background, so I was quite surprised that that you got commission for making sales. I didn't really know that, so I was quite interested in that. Very quickly I moved over to like advertising sales, like newspapers and magazines and stuff like that. But I was probably and then went into like HR technology and recruitment technology and stuff like that. But I was probably a salesperson for about 5 or 6 years. And then I moved into sales leadership, and I was in sales leadership for over a decade. When I got my first sales leader job, I had absolutely no business having that job. That very vintage story of being a good salesperson, being promoted to lead other people, absolutely no support, no help, just do it. But yeah, I suppose I fumbled my way through my early sales leadership career, and I think I got quite good. But yeah, I've probably sat in all the sales leadership seats except from CRO. And then in 2020 or 2021, I can't remember, I made the conscious pivot into enablement. And the reason for that was I was in a bit of a funk with sales leadership. My shtick was turning around failing teams and going into companies like that. But what I found was I tended to be doing the same things as doing lots of training, lots of work on discovery, lots of sales process. And then someone said, that's an actual job in itself. Told me about sales enablement, joined that, and then I've never looked back since. I currently am the Senior Director of Enablement at a company called Technology Advice, which is a B2B media publisher. And yeah, I've been here for a year. And yeah, it's going well. We're doing good stuff.
I love it, man. I love it. And whenever I hear enablement professionals that started in sales, I immediately feel that you understand seller's word a little bit better. Look, yes, many enablers might hate me for this when I say this, right? But in reality, if you've never done the job, it's really hard to really understand the feelings. Like that you go through this motion that I suck. Oh, this deal didn't move forward. My life is over. I'm done. I have no place in sale. And, all of a sudden your, commission structure changes. Like all this stuff, like this, you need to really experience it to feel it.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you really walk the walk from being a seller, getting to leadership. And then you noticed a gap with actual, training and coaching and developing and enabling your sellers. All right. So look, I think this is going to be a really interesting conversation. You're in leadership seat. I've been in the trenches, like selling. So when I started, I really sucked at selling. So C player turned to B player and then A player. And my whole mindset shifted, not because I was just chasing numbers. I really got to like sales. Like I hated sales at the beginning. It was a job that I had to do. And I, randomly got into sales and I learned my way up. But at the same time, I really struggled with certain things. And one of those topics that I want to talk about today is coaching. because I genuinely didn't get any. I sold for public companies, I sold for startups, I sold for hyper growth, startups. No coaching whatsoever. So I wanted to start it by this. Like, what's coaching, Kieran? Just give me the definition.
Well, my definition of coaching, and I've said this on a few different podcasts or to a few different people. Like, I think there's a lot of confusion between feedback and coaching. And my definition of coaching is it's a human interaction, and I'm going to quantify why I say that in a second, because obviously there's lots of AI out there and stuff like that. But normally, initially, it's a human interaction that is led by questions that influences future performance. Normally, there's quite a lot of self-reflection, or quote unquote should be self-reflection. And I think when it comes to feedback's an opinion that's on something that is an opinion on something that's already happened. Whereas coaching, you're talking about what happened, but you're trying to influence future performance through taking someone on that coaching journey. So that would be how I define it. And yes, you could do group coaching, you can do lots of different settings, but for me, with salespeople, I think one-to-one coaching is really, really powerful, because it builds that trust, it builds that value. It takes time to build that trust, but I think that's how I would define it. And like, you want to create that psychological safety where someone feels safe enough to say, I did this wrong, or I could do this better, or I didn't like how I did this. Or by the flip side, be able to say, I think I did this really, really well, without someone going, oh, who do you think you are? So I think it's a whole interaction. It's a whole, for me, it's all about the quality of questions that you ask.
Very interesting. Look, it reminds me of some of my experiences. Like, you talk about group coaching sessions. Like, I didn't have a group coaching sessions in my career, to be honest, but it was more like doing role plays in group and get some feedback. And to me, this is structurally wrong, as you said, because this is not a safe space. You can say we are a team, we are a family, we love each other, there is trust. I'm a seller, I'm very competitive, and maybe I screw up in front of everyone. It crushed my soul. That day is gone. So try to tell me that we are family. I don't care. Like, you ruin someone's image by giving this. And maybe, again, some people are more open just to be in the group and hearing it. Why not? But it's not for everyone. And the main reason why we are doing it in a group setting is because we don't have the bandwidth, obviously. And nobody can go on one-on-ones every single day and let me just understand you and why it happened. What's the root cause of what is actually not working? Sometimes you're just like, this is not happening. Okay, let's just dig in and understand what's not actually working in his life. So I want to hear from your perspective what a good one-on-one coaching should look like. I know you said starts with questions, but can you just open up one example and give me something tangible?
Yeah, as I say, I think whether someone's just come off a call, say a salesperson's come off a call and they're going to catch up with their manager afterwards, or you're doing a role play, like but one-on-one role play. As I say, I think where lots of managers or leaders get this wrong is they will immediately go into the feedback mode. So they say, "Let me tell you what I think," and that's tough, right? Because like everyone braces themselves, like, is it? Oh, here we go. And I think the best opening question that you can ask any salesperson at all when it comes to when you get into that, and you have to put your coaching hat on, right? Because it's going to take a bit of time. And it's not this big grandiose, wizard's hat. But what I'm saying is, if you're going to ask the question, you're going to have to see it through, right? There's no point in asking an empty question. So for me, the number one question after a role play or after a call, if I were leader, is, so how do you think that went? And the reason for that is the way that the salesperson answers allows you to adapt your questions and use the right presuppositions. And to give you an example, we've all done it. We've all been the salesperson that's overly confident, or we've all been the salesperson that's overly negative about themselves and overly self-deprecating and stuff like that. But as a leader who wants to coach, that first question allows you to adapt to everything else. So if I was to ask a salesperson, let's just say I've got my own opinion, and it was an okay call, it was average, right? If I say, how did that go? And they go, that was amazing. That was fantastic. I got all the information I wanted. And I know in the back of my head that wasn't the case, right? Because I was, on the call, watched the call, or was part of the role play. I can see what they're thinking about, what they focus on, why they think they did well. And again, yes, I might ask some filler questions. You say, "Oh, you did discovery. Oh, so you got all the information you thought you were going to get." Yeah, okay. And I wouldn't, again, you have to resist the urge at that point to jump in, because it's very, very easy to do. But on the flip side of that, if someone goes, "Oh, do you know that was terrible?" Because some people don't like, they might remember one thing that happened and it threw them off, or they
Mm-hmm.
didn't close for the meeting at the end and they forgot all this really good information they got. So if you hear how they talk about that and they say, "Oh, it was terrible, and I wish I did this, and I wish I did that," and oh my god, so you know that when you go into the next part, you need to ask them about that and why. You ask them to validate why they felt like that, but then also you know that you have to then focus on the good things that they did. And again, all
Mm-hmm.
of these things, when you ask these questions, go on that journey, I think at that point you then know where to coach and what to coach. And then the important bit is how we coach as a manager. And as I say, it's all about the questions we ask as opposed to the information we give. And as I say, we often start with a download. I thought this. What do you think? But as I like to flip that on its head and say, how do you think that went? Listen to that. And then my follow up question to that, before I get into anything else, before I give anything from me, is on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate that call? And again, that number that they give is fairly arbitrary, but I want to understand. I want to know where they would place themselves. And then my follow up question to that, again, because it's all about questions. So if I say on a scale of 1 to 10, I say a 6. I say a 6. And they go, "Why? What do you think?" I say, "No, we're talking about you, right? Like, so a 6. Why do you think it was a 6? This, and this." And then my first coaching question, which actually has nothing to do with me, is, okay, if that was a 6, what would it take to take that from a 6 to a 7? And immediately they start giving you some of the action points that are at the top of their head or at the top of their mind. So again, are they self-aware? Are they self-reflective? Are they hitting the main key things, right? And then what that, again, it allows you, you've got all of this information before you actually start to delve in and press the bruises and maybe give some home truths versus building someone up. So that's as I say, like, that can be done very quickly, or you can take your time and you can do this. But again, like, I think if you start any sort of coaching like that, the amount of information you get about that person, their headspace, what they think, and then where they want to take themselves versus where you want to take them, I just don't think there's a better initial set of questions, personally.
I really love this. This is really smart. Like the way you do it is basically you get all the answers, like running a good discovery call.
Same,
It's,
yeah,
I don't know. It's not about me. It's about you. You tell me how you
yeah.
feel. Now let me ask you this. Like we always do this, like with clients that are not the right fit, and that's totally fine. We might even just send them to a competitor because we want to have that good relationship, right? Just to have a good, at least good feeling after that call that hey, we are not a fit, go elsewhere. But we cannot do this with our talent because like they're
Yeah,
already there, right?
yeah.
So just imagine you see someone who is, as you said, overly confident about their performance, or they're actually doing a lot of self sabotage and although you ask great questions, maybe the plan that they have in their mind is it's not really something that can help them move forward, or maybe it is. I know there's maybe a little bit of judgment in what I'm saying, and
Mhm.
the answer might be that hey, this is what they think, and this is their growth journey. But at the
Mhm.
same time, as a leader, you have targets. As a
Sure.
leader, you have to help them see the truth, yes, by themselves, but how would you guide them if they're not realistic?
I think again it boils down to the questions that you ask, right? And again, if you're the leader and you have access to those dashboards, for example, and I know that they get lots of discovery calls, either self-sourced or from SDRs or whatever, but not many convert to an opportunity, or they get ghosted all the time. Then
Yeah.
my question track might change. Why do you think that happens? Right. So you said, like, you're doing lots of these discovery calls, but not many are converting. Why do you think that is? Again, sometimes you may have to change the why question. Sometimes why can be a little bit too aggressive, depending on or a bit too direct, depending on the
Mhm.
situation. And then because I would probably already have a hypothesis, very similar, like you say, to a discovery call.
Yeah.
I would probably have a hypothesis already,
Mhm.
but it might be that you're asking lots of questions, but you're not getting a pain point, right? So you're not
Mhm.
tying it. You're not getting it. You might get a pain point, but it's surface level. It's an
Yeah.
implied pain. It's not an explicit pain. And you say, well, what's the difference? Well, if you've got an explicit pain, it allows you with a metric, it allows you to tie it to an impact, and people care about the impact. right?
Yeah.
So when you have the impact, you can then talk about the desired future state. So again, you might take them on that journey, right? And again, sometimes you might play other snippets or you might do this, but again, for me, it's again, you can even reverse it and make it a question. Why do you believe that that more of your discovery calls don't turn into opportunities, or whatever the next stage is, or you could do even it happens further down the funnel as well, right? Where you've delivered a proposal that actually doesn't meet the problem that they had, or you don't understand the priority level of this problem. Like, sales is very nuanced, but I think I would have a hypothesis going into it. I would ask questions around it, and then sometimes, depending on how long that behaviour goes on for, sometimes you have to be direct. Sometimes you have to be authoritative and say, or you have to rather than like lead a horse to water. Sometimes you have to give the answer. I remember a coaching session I had once, and it was after I'm probably one of the few leaders who actually was given management training during their time as a manager. And one part of it was coaching. It was actually really, really good. But my boss, who was a good friend of mine, he went through the same training. And what we were taught to do during this thing was, so what do you think? How do you think you could solve that problem? Or how do you, it was like, again, coaching and throwing it back rather than giving the answer. But I remember I didn't know the answer to this problem. And my friend, my boss was like, he was, how do you think you could solve it? I was like, Jamie, listen, I don't know. Any ideas? Yeah, I've got some ideas, but how do you think? I said, Jamie, listen, right? You've asked me that 4 times. I don't know the answer. Right. So sometimes you can't question your way out of it. Sometimes you have to give an answer, even if you frame it not as a must do, even if you frame it as a what do you think of this? Like, well, based on what you said, have you ever thought about trying something like this? Or if you got this type of information, do you think that would make the call stronger? So again, it's all down to the skill of how you phrase it or how you ask that question. But sometimes you've got to be direct. It's the same with a client, right? If you don't close for next steps, you'll never hear from them again, right?
Yep.
So it's very similar. Like, you've got to get agreement on something, and I think that's the way to drive forward. That behavior continues and poor performance continues. We all know how that ends. We've probably all been in part of those conversations in our career, right?
Absolutely. This resonates a lot because, to your point, like even in sales calls, sometimes you can ask the best questions in the world, share, your perspective, and you still see, resistance towards like really actually, sharing some information. And you have to ask the hard question and be direct about it. Like, this is what I'm noticing. And sometimes actually, call it on the call. I don't see much, interest here. Or I see, resistance. What's going on here? Am I doing a horrible job, or, we're completely off base from the
Well, that's
get
it.
go? So let's
I think
talk.
you've called it. I think sometimes you're signposting it. Like, I do this all the time because mine is internal selling now, right? So it's less of being customer facing. But I was on a leadership call a few weeks ago, and I didn't necessarily agree with something that someone else said. And I said, listen, do you mind if I ask you a potentially antagonistic question? So you set it up. And the question, or do you mind if I ask you a direct question? So it's never as bad as they perceive it's going to be.
Yeah.
But I'm setting it up to, like, if you say no, cool, like, we won't go down this route. We probably will. I'll just rephrase it in a different way.
Yeah.
But what I say is, do you mind if I ask you? And then I said, do you mind if I ask you a potentially antagonistic question? And he said, go for it. And I said, listen, there's no way for me to ask this question but to ask it. And then I asked the question, and it was absolutely fine after that. So again, sometimes you've got to do that with your coaches as well. Like, do you mind if can I just say something really direct here? And they'll say yes, right? I say, I'm going to say something here, and I don't mean it how it sounds, but I can only say it how I say it, right? And then, like, whatever the outcome of that is, whatever the reaction to that is, you deal with that afterwards. But your job as the leader is to deal with the performance. Right. And it's not always easy. It's not always nice conversations. But I would rather coach and flag these things up and them leave with the action points. And I can point back. Like, I've fired lots of people in my career. Most sales leaders have. Never once has it been a surprise. Never. And I pride myself in it's never been a surprise, because we've always had those conversations. And it's been leading up to it and being like, by the way, we spoke about this, it still hasn't changed. And then that's the people that you know that haven't, maybe they don't have it in them for that company or for that opportunity. That's fine. They might go on to be great at sales. Good luck. But you need, as a leader, you need to coach, but you also need to drive performance. And those are very different things.
Very interesting point, and it makes me to think about another topic I want to open up. So you do your best as a leader, and it's a hard, sit to, be on, because to your point, you have to drive this behavior change. You have to be supportive of your team. You have to help them, grow and enable them. But at the same time, responsible for numbers. I'm the captain of the ship. I have to, try. I cannot let other people sink with you because you're not coachable or you don't want to change. Let's talk about like the best and worst trait of salespeople that you've seen in your career,
Sure.
and just break it down in terms of not only skill sets but also mindset. I'm just curious to hear your perspective on it.
Do you know what? And this is again, this is similar to what you were saying about sales enablement. People being better if they've been in sales. And I come from a sporting background. I think the reason that lots of people with like a sporting background do well in sales is because they're used to doing the monotonous things every day.
Mm-hmm.
Like, listen, you might see the clips of this, your favourite sports team doing all these lovely things in training. The fact 90% of it's running, 90% of it's stretching, 90% of it's turning up on time. Like that's what it is. And I think it's the same for salespeople. So for me, like the original bit is, can you do the TNT? It takes no talent, right? Can you turn up on time? Can you have the right attitude? Can you
Mm-hmm.
time block your calendar? Can you do those basic things? Can you do it every day? Right, that for me, that's the sort of the base. Anything is like, whatever the saying is, 80% of life is just turning up. See, if you just turn up and do the fundamentals, and it's the same in any sport, same as any pet, like whether you're a virtuoso violinist or pianist or whatever, the people who are the best at anything in the world do the basics and the fundamentals better and faster and more consistently than anybody else. All the other fancy things, they come after. And it's the same for salespeople. If you can turn up, do this, hit your activity, go after the correct ICP, be in the game. As I say, time block your calendar. I think it takes no talent part, right? They got to show up with a positive attitude, and as positive you can be that day. There's not all sunshine and rainbows in sales
Mm-hmm.
every day, like you said, but that takes no talent to turn up. It takes no talent to be there on time. It takes no talent to ask how people are doing. To spend an extra 5 minutes, right? Or to not just to not do something because you don't like it. Like, just do it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the basics, right? And hold yourself to that standard of being consistently good at the
Mm-hmm.
fundamentals all the time. And then I think outside of that, I listen. There's a lot of things that just are in sales, but none of them are not teachable or unteachable, right? Like people say curiosity. I think curiosity is the biggest one. If you're genuinely curious, it helps you as an SDR, it helps you as a salesperson, it helps you as a leader, it helps you as all of these things. I think just being curious. And then outside of that, I think everything comes down to questions. Like when you're an SDR, if you use your pattern interrupt, whether that is you got 27 seconds to let me, oh my God, this is a cold call, do you want to hang up? See, after that, every good question you ask buys you 15 more seconds. And again, that's how it goes until that last question is, so do you want a meeting? So everything comes down to the quality of questions that you ask. And if you ask the wrong question or the right question to the wrong person, you hear them, what? You hear it or you see it on their face, right? So again, it all comes down to the questions. And then do you follow up on that question, or have you got everything and you move on? That takes us to AEs. Like, yeah, you can set an agenda. Yeah, you can control the call, but what questions are you asking, right? And there's lots of, go and have a little bit of research, and this other company have a little bit of research on how many questions you should ask. I don't believe that there's a magic number. I believe that there's a level of quality that needs to be there, or
Mm-hmm.
relevance, even if it's not quality. It's a level of relevance. One of my biggest pet peeves is what I just mentioned, is asking the right question to the wrong person. Like when I worked at Andela, as an example, we dealt with staff augmentation, which was contractors from other parts of the world that they would work remotely for large companies, mainly in the US. We had a rep, very, very tenured rep. I'd worked for Microsoft, there were people like that, and he gets the CTO of Northwestern Mutual, so a Fortune 50 company, Fortune 10 company, 50,000 employees, some ungodly number of billions of turnover. And he's got the CTO. Now, bear in mind, you might never get this person on a call again, ever, in your
Mm-hmm.
career, right? And because it was staff augmentation, right, he gets on, yeah, how are you doing? And then the first question was, so what's your average time to hire? You could just see the person be like, this was a waste of my time. Like the
Mm-hmm.
CTO cares about projects and market share and share price and security breaches and are we in with what are we doing with AI, and especially for a bank or an insurance company, like all of these different things. He doesn't care about how long it takes to get people in seats. He cares about what headcount is to make sure this project happens. If this
Mm-hmm.
project doesn't happen, what's the impact of that? Except like, but so Again, it comes down to the quality of the questions you ask, and I think that's a life thing, but certainly within sales, it comes down to the quality of questions you ask. And then what I mean by that also is when to be curious, when to be direct, when to close for the next step, when to funnel people in. I just think if you can combine curiosity with good questions, I think you're probably 60% of the way there.
This is really interesting. Like lately, I've been thinking about this a lot. Like we are building another AI coach as well. We've been in the market. We try to develop this and get it as close as possible so we can give a good experience to end user. And I've been thinking about this a lot. It's like, what is it that we can measure beyond just scorecards? Like, did you follow your medic, for example, or did you do your permission based open? Sure, these are all great. Yes, best practices in playbook and all that. But you mentioned something about curiosity, and I'm like, how do you even like measure curiosity? Maybe you can't, maybe you can. I don't know. While you were just telling this story about the rep getting a CTO of a Fortune 1050 on the call, so I would say maybe the root cause of that problem is that they don't know their buyer personas. They don't know what's happening in their life. That's why they cannot even be curious about
No.
asking any relevant question. Just like, see, he's never going to, maybe, hopefully, like in the future, if he wants, be that level of,
Mm.
CTO level, executive level. But many reps are reps. This is your day to day. So you don't understand like what's going on in their life. And why would I be curious about the CTO's life? So what kind
Yeah.
of questions I can even ask? Do you think that that could be the root cause of this problem? That maybe people are curious, but they just don't know about who they're talking to.
I think one of the biggest problems right now within sales is people not understanding their buyer persona or going just because they're so hungry for meetings and so hungry
Yeah.
for all that they'll meet with anybody. You've seen that there's a meme that goes about from Titanic. I think it was I'm not your buyer persona. I don't care. Let me talk to you. We'll waste each other's time. There's an awful lot of that going on. I understand that everybody's under pressure to get meetings and have conversations and open opportunities, but we all know what happens at the other side of that, right? Like nothing
Mm-hmm.
happens. And I think, do you know what I think the thing is you get, and what I mean by curiosity is teachable, is I think it comes down to the presuppositions of how you ask your questions, right? So that's what I'm saying. Like I love discovery. It's my favorite thing to work on. Like I love it. Like even when we did it at my company I'm at now, I couldn't do one session on it. I had to do two sessions on it. And one was called the art of discovery. The other one was called the science of discovery. We broke it
Mm-hmm.
up. In the art, it had like psychology and it had the storytelling and all these sorts of things. And then the other side, it was like metrics, pain funnel, meeting
Mm-hmm.
controls. It was all stuff like that. But as I say, I think I highlighted one of our best sales reps, one of her calls the other day, and the best thing that she did was how she asked the question. And the way to force quote unquote curiosity is questions like, "Can you help me understand this? Can you explain to when you say that? Can you explain to me what you mean? Can you walk me through this? Can you show like so again? If you walk again, like these are like I studied neuro linguistic programming, so I'm big on words, right? So again, it's like, can you help me understand that like that, or can you explain to me? Can you walk me through? Can you Can you show me an example of, right? Or can you talk me through when you say that? Can you talk to me a bit more about this? Right? So you're asking questions that beget you information rather than well, that was good. When you said that, was that good or did that work? And it's so closed, right? And again,
Yeah.
it's like even if you're talking to an ICP, listen, I speak to lots of CTOs at companies, and rather than me assume that you're the same as everybody else, could you just give me an overview of what your department does and what your main focuses are in the next 6, 12, 18 months?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like just get like ask a big open question. Like for me, when I'm working on it, I say get in, do your small talk, weather, whatever, football team, whatever, agenda, upfront contract if you can, or set expectations. Big, broad, open question. Can you give me an overview? Can you walk me through what your priorities are coming into this, rather than me assuming? Because I speak to lots of people. Can you walk me through? Can you help me understand? Like for me, like that's a curious question. Whether you like it or not, right? Whether you're curious or not, you're going to get enough information to work with
Mm.
just off of asking questions like that. So that's what I mean is you curiosity is an intrinsic thing, but I think you can teach it.
Mm. This is really really interesting. So even if we cannot quantify it in a sense that say, hey, you're 78% curious, but let's just look at the quality of the questions you're asking and how you're asking it.
And then
To your
for
point.
me, it's number of follow up questions, right?
Yeah.
So like I'm a big note taker. I always have been.
Mm.
The thing is the reason I want to ask a big broad question. So what my job is, if I'm looking at that call, is what did they do with that information? Right. So how many calls did I ask that started like walk me through, talk me through, help me understand, explain? That's what I want to see. But then what happens after that? So again, your first step for a rep is ask questions that sound like this. Then the next step, once they're doing that, is what are you doing with that information? So I think you quantify it? Yes, I think you can. If you look at those, because you have open ended, closed questions. You could call them curious questions. Are they open? Yes, but if we want to be specific on curiosity, then we could ban that, right? And be like, walk me through. And then as I say, for me, it's like, okay, they mentioned this, this, and this, and you never spoke about it again, right? Sort of visual for salespeople is like metal detector on the beach, right? When you hear the beep, so there's certain things, that's when you dig, right? And based on how the digging is going, you'll know when it's time to stop, and you go else when you move on to something else. But you've got to hear the beep. If you get the information and you don't hear the beep, that's on you. That's what I'm saying is like, so you ask the big question, then your job as a salesperson is what's your follow up? How much do you follow up before you interrogate someone versus when do you shift to something else? But as I say, I think for curiosity, that's how I would start to work on it. Is how are you asking the questions to get the information? Then phase 2 is how are you following up on that? And then phase 3 is how are you linking that to an impact or a problem that you're uniquely positioned to solve? And then at that point, you become valuable.
Very interesting. Do you believe your reps burn leads practicing on client calls? When it comes to giving them one-on-one coaching sessions, you just don't have the bandwidth, so you get rid of them altogether? Or maybe you notice that your team spends a lot of time on non-revenue tasks like taking notes, updating CRM, or drafting emails. These are the exact challenges we solve for other revenue leaders like yourself. With Sell Me the Spend AI Coach, you can offer your reps role-play sessions at scale while automating one-on-one coaching sessions based on your best practices and methodology. Also, AI will take care of all their non-revenue tasks, like note-taking, CRM updates, draft the email for them, so they can focus on constant improvement while you're focusing on one thing and one thing only, revenue growth. If you're interested in learning more about the clients we are working with or use cases that might be beneficial to you, check us out at sellmethespend.ai. Now, we hear a lot of big words like empathy. It's just kind of like a fluffy, nice word to use. Hey, be empathetic, add value. And what does this mean? Like, poor rep just sitting there, just, sure, I have to be a better human being. But like, tactically, what does this even mean to be empathetic?
I think what it means in sales is to be customer centric and try and understand the customer. That's what it should mean, quote unquote, should, right? Is don't just, because I think for the longest time, and we still have it, of course, but the thing is salespeople will go on and only talk about themselves and only talk about their company and only talk about what we do and how good we are. And that's not empathetic to the customer's situation. So I think empathy in sales is being customer centric, right? If you boil sales down to its most basic form, is what problem do you have and let me help you solve it, right? And then you can pay me for solving that problem, right? Like that's kind of what sales is, and I think we lost that for a long time, where it's turned up and we do this, 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 and this. We've worked with Google and Apple and Intel, like every other company in the world, right? Like who cares, right? So that's, for me, that's what empathy means, is being customer centric, which I think is really, really important, right? Probably used all the methodologies, right? Probably at some point. And I would say that my favourite is probably gap selling. And I've never used it in an official capacity, but I think that's very customer centric. It's very, where are you right now? What's your desired future state? What is the gap? Let me help you solve it. Then obviously you have other, what do you think is the blocker versus actually this might be the blocker? Which again brings in a bit of challenger. And I think that's what empathy is, and I think that's why Keenan does so well with gap selling. Is for that reason in particular. Is I don't know if being a nice person is necessarily what it means. I know that that's what we've taken it to mean, but like, how many times have you been on the call and say, "Yeah, well, thanks you so much for giving me that information." That like, oh, shut up! Like I've got 100 other things to do. I don't need you to thank me for every bit of info. Thanks for sharing that. That's not empathy. That's just annoying. Like not every question I ask is a great question. Like it's not. Right? Like, so again, listen, I'm a little bit old school when it comes to stuff like that, and I'm absolutely not advocating for people to come on and just pitch slap, and that's not it at all. But as with all things, like I think the definition of empathy in sales is expanded to a point that doesn't really matter.
But look, no, I'm with you, man. It's it's just like being nice does not close deals, because if you don't understand someone's problem and be direct about how you can actually solve it and just try to fluff it up by using nice word, this is not empathy. To your point, being relevant to clients, just trying to really understand the buyer journey that they have to walk through internally, and the punches they most probably going to get from their CFO and procurement, just trying
Yeah.
to understand that and say, hey, potentially I can help you walk that process together, would be a better definition for empathy than just like, hey, I appreciate you joining me today. Like, yeah,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah, yeah.
sure, I appreciate that.
But also, like, see if that's you. Like, I always, when I was doing cold calls, I say, "How are you?" Right? And people say, "Oh, don't ever ask that." And I'm like, "Well, that's how I would actually talk." It's the same. If I write
Yeah,
an email, I sign it "Cheers." Why? Because that's how.
yeah,
If I was on the phone, I'd write "Cheers, bye." Right? Like
yeah.
that's so. If that's authentically you, cool, do it. Right? That's fine. But I don't think it is authentically everybody I hear saying it. That's the difference, right? Like I've spoken to some people, right, from like certain parts of the world, and you go, they are the nicest people in the world, but you can tell it's authentic. And you speak to some other people, and you go, like, just get on with it, man. Right? Like I don't, yeah, I am not that nice of a person that you need to keep complimenting me on these
Yeah.
things. So if it's authentically you, cool. I'm a huge fan of that. Like if that is your language within reason, obviously, and that's your vernacular, cool, have at it. But to force it doesn't make sense, right? Like you don't actually win any, you don't carry any favor with it. You end up pissing people off.
You just opened another can of. So tell me about authenticity, because to your point, how do we coach on authenticity? Can you just like when you, I don't know, do a role play or listen to a call? How do you recognize that someone is not authentic, and how do you bring it up? Like, let's say it's a coaching session.
Good, very good question, Michael. Thanks for that. Thanks for sharing that.
There you go.
That's me being empathetic, right? I'm not going to finish with that. But do you know what? I think the way that I sort of explain it is because I'm a big frameworks guy, right? And I love a freedom within a framework. So for me, it's
Yep.
like agenda, discovery questions. So it's like sections of
Yeah.
the call. So how you get there is entirely up to you.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's like have your framework, know the information that you need to get, and then that bit in the middle, that delta in the middle, is where you get to be yourself, and that's where the magic happens. Right? For me,
Mm-hmm.
that's when I get excited. So when someone comes out of like onboarding or they're, like you can see their brain, like a beautiful mind, and they have all these things going through their brain when they're trying to talk
Yeah.
and ask this question. Oh, I forgot about that. And once you get past that, once you get to a certain level of like comfortability with that framework and stuff like that, I think at that point, that's when you turn up. You can ask the question how you would ask it. We can debate whether that was the right way to ask that question or if that was the right thing
Mm-hmm.
to say at the right time. That's fine. But yeah, I think that's like one of my favorite things to see with salespeople is them being themselves. Whether that's in the small talk,
Mm-hmm.
whether that's just in the questions.
Yep.
There's a book that's called like Stillness at 90 miles an hour. See when you've got that feeling, it's not quite flow state, but see when you're not going to be rushed and you can go, yeah, yeah. I think that's honestly, it's one of the most encouraging, like joyful things that I can see in my job now is when someone can just be themselves. Listen,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes people are themselves too early, right? And they just and what I mean by that is they go
Yeah.
off of the personality cell as opposed to
Yeah.
getting the information. And like
Yeah.
I did it, right? I'll give you an example. When I worked for a newspaper, so it was advertising, and it was on what was it on? Management consultants, business consultants. It was something I didn't find particularly interesting at the ripe old age of 22. But it was a feature on them, and we were selling advertising to them. I remember speaking to the guy, and I was going, "Yep, yeah, and we can do this," and he was going, "Yep, yep, yep." And I was like, "This guy obviously is not interested." So then I was like, "Listen, if you don't want it, I'll just let you go." He's like, "No, no, I'm interested." And I was like, "What do you mean?" Because I could only ever sell to people who were like me, right? And I had no real formal training at this point, so I
Yeah.
just went in and just went blah 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 blah. And if people bounced off me, it was
Yeah.
great because we just have a normal conversation.
Yeah.
But again, that was hindering me, right? Because I didn't know what I was trying to get to, and I was just being too. I wasn't following a framework or a structure. I was just going in with a personality and just trying to
Mm-hmm.
talk and talk, probably talking people into submission. Like, get this guy off the phone. I'll just buy something so he leaves me alone. But yeah, as I say, I think authenticity is like my wife. She works in sales. She's a key account person, and I make fun of her sometimes because she's definitely got like a pitching voice, right? And I could poke my head in and go like I just laugh. Like I've never had that. Like never.
Yeah.
Rightly or wrongly, I've never had it. But like there's nothing wrong with that. because she's still being authentic to herself. But like I don't have the vintage phone voice that some people have.
So look, I really love to ask this question. When you're in conversation with someone, if you're good at what you do, you can recognize, you can read the room. If someone is bored, if someone is, getting frustrated, if, and even over the phone, to your point, like I was saying, yep, yep, yep. Oh God. So
Yeah.
can we put a label to this as a skill set? Can we say like this is a skill set to be able to understand someone? Like, what would we call that?
Suppose it's emotional intelligence, right? EQ, I suppose. I mean, I'd assume that it'd fall under something like that. I guess do you know what? Now that you're saying it, there's probably two sides to the same coin. You have, are you engaging so
Yeah.
that you don't lose people? And then the flip side of that is, if you are losing people, can you change gear to try and get people back on track, or whatever change gear is that you call it out, like you said before, am I way off track here? It seems like you're less enthusiastic about this. Should I move on from it? Like so, but I think you need to have the emotional intelligence to call that out, right? Because if you get it wrong, you could alienate that person. So I think maybe you have two sides to the same thing. You have the, are you engaging, or do you know how? And listen, we've all been in that situation where you've got multiple stakeholders. Then it becomes really difficult to engage. And
Yeah.
have I remembered to ask a question to everybody or to check everyone's fine? Because you invariably that one time you don't, you get feedback afterwards like, you really didn't ask, you didn't engage everyone, and this person still with some questions. So as I say, I think it's probably two sides of the same thing. Are you engaging? And if you can see people, are you emotionally intelligent enough to see that some people are disengaged? And then how do you react to that?
Love it. Last question. Look, we know what's going on with macroeconomics and the close ratios that we see, in reports right now. I think it was a column Pavilion, I don't remember, and they were sharing some stats, and it's still crazy. Like we thought it was like only stuck in back in 2023, but still going really nuts, right? 70-80% of people like losing deals or whatever these numbers mean, but it's not as strong, right? What would be one advice you could give to leaders? It's one of those loaded questions, I know, but I want to hear from your perspective. If they are, enabling the reps, if they have an enablement person, in the organization, what can they do to help the reps to do better in 2025?
I think right now, listen, we can enable all we want. I think right now mindset's probably the biggest thing. I saw this video, I think it's from a couple of years ago. I think it's by the Duke women's basketball coach, and it says handle hard better. And I think that's the key to 2025. People go, 2024 was rough. I've got news for you. 2025 is going to be the same, right? So when I say handle hard better, what I mean is turn up, don't do the basic, don't do the minimum and expect maximum results. Handle it better. Oh, it's really difficult to get people on the phone. How do I improve my chances at being better here? Go at like zoom in on your IB or your buyer personas. Make your list ahead of your calling block, right? Don't just send the same email to 10,000 people. Have a think about it, right? A big thing that I've been focusing on recently is don't look at your TAM, your total addressable market, niche down. Look at your total relevant market, right? Those sound like the same thing, but they're really not. Get yourself some quick wins. Handle hard better. It's just really, people are objecting a lot to what we're talking about. What are they objecting to? Go and do some research. Come back. Put the effort in. Right? Sales is I think Johan Cruyff, the Dutch football player, said football's a simple game complicated by idiots. Sales is the same. It's a very simple thing. Lots of effort required. Lots of questions, good questions required to be asking, but nothing's going to change macroeconomically. It just isn't. It just isn't. Now, are you? I went through this with our team here. Are you turning up or are you showing up? Because they sound the same, but turning up is turning up and doing the bare minimum. Showing up is showing up prepared, ready to ask the questions, ready to push, ready to fight. Maybe you're ready to fight for the deal, but are you showing up every day? Right? Because that sets you. And if you, and that goes back to that consistency. Can you do that every single day? Show up instead of turning up. Handle hard better. That's it. Like the world is not going to change the way that you want it to. Very rarely is people. The fish are not going to start jumping into the boat. So you have to become a better fisherman, fisherwoman, whatever. So yeah, my thing is handle hard better. Don't do the bare minimum and expect maximum results.
It's always the best way, I guess. Go back to the basics, stick to
100%.
it, and don't expect a magical change. I won't change anything for you. You got to do the hard work.
There's never been a silver bullet. No one's ever found one, right?
Yep.
We keep looking for them, and people, gurus, keep promising them. We've never had one. We've never had one, right?
Yep.
As I said, boil it down to what is your problem? Let me help you fix it. And if I'm reaching out to you trying to get your attention, why don't I lead with that problem? Why? Because that's your
Mm-hmm.
problem, right? So if
Mm-hmm.
that's your problem, what's the impact that problem's having on you? What if I took away that impact and helped you? Now I'm valuable. That's really simple to say. The execution, that's where the magic happens. But if that's what your thought is in your brain, that's the right starting point, right? And you might have to
Mm-hmm.
rinse, repeat, evolve, change, A, B, C, D, E, F, test.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. But that's where the hard work is. That's where you have to do it better. Nobody's going to do that for you. No matter what lead gen campaign, no matter what marketing campaign, it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. You've just got to do the work.
Yeah.
Consistency is do the fundamentals, do them every day, do them better every day, and then hopefully you can get some coaching, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Mm-hmm. I'm
I just don't
completely
think
with
it
you,
gets
man.
any more difficult than that.
We are making it really complicated, especially because the options are more right now. And
Of course.
although as leaders, like, oh, I'm tired of like having a busy tool stack, but at the same time, you're still looking for that silver bullet because it's hard work. From the
Yeah.
rep perspective, it's hard work because you hear more no's right now than yesterday. And for leaders, it's harder because, to your point, with consistency, you can A/B test and find the patterns. Go back to the basics, stick to it, and you will find the answer if you care enough. Like to me, the foundation is always the biggest winner. Anyways, Kieran, enjoyed this conversation. Thanks
Yeah, it
for
was great,
joining
mate.
me,
Thank you very much.
and I guess see you soon.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers, man. Take care.